That night, when darkness enveloped my cozy home in Chicago, I struggled with insomnia, trying to immerse myself in the world of dreams. For hours, I tossed and turned on my bed, trying to forget about the strange sounds and mysterious shadows that seemed to gather around me. But the longer I lay in the darkness, the clearer it became that something was amiss this night. Sensing an unsettling feeling creeping over me, I opened my eyes and scanned the room. In the corner stood a dark, enigmatic figure, watching me with its piercing gaze, as if delving into the depths of my soul. Its presence filled the room with an unknown terror, making me feel like a prisoner in the lair of evil. My heart raced wildly as I realized I was witnessing something extraordinary. My hands shook as I struggled to comprehend what to do. I wanted to scream, but my throat tightened with fear. The creature remained motionless, its dark eyes gleaming in the darkness, and I felt its gaze penetrating my very being. In that moment, I realized I had become a hostage in my own home, and that this night would be a trial that would determine my fate. Desperately trying to escape this nightmare, I sat up in bed and closed my eyes, hoping it was all just a dream. But when I opened my eyes again, the creature was still there, shimmering in the darkness. My thoughts were in chaos as I realized the door to my room was locked. A sense of panic washed over me, and I rushed to the door, trying to break free. But it was no use. The door remained unmoved, as if locked by an invisible force. It seemed to me that this creature knew my thoughts, that it was playing with me like a cat with a mouse. It continued to stand by the window, emitting strange sounds that made my blood run cold. In terror, I realized I had become a prisoner in my own home, and that the creature had no intention of letting me go. Fear paralyzed me, and I pressed myself against the wall, wishing this was all just a dream from which I would soon awaken. But as the creature drew closer, its dark eyes gleaming in the darkness, I realized my nightmare was only just beginning, and that my life would be forever changed by this terrifying night in Chicago. At the last moment, as the creature approached me, I closed my eyes and focused on my thoughts. Suddenly, I felt something change in the air around me. When I opened my eyes again, the creature was gone, and the room was bathed in light. Stunned, I approached the window and saw the dawn beginning to illuminate the street. The creature was no longer visible, as if it had vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. With trembling hands, I opened the door and stepped out of the room. The whole house seemed safe and peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But I knew it was an extraordinary event that had changed my life. Since then, I have become more attentive to the world around me, ready to face extraordinary events and prepared to fight the dark forces that may lurk around us at any moment. Though I did not know what exactly that creature was and why it appeared, I felt that my life had become richer and more interesting after that encounter. Chapter 1. The Party. Chicago, a city where every corner was imbued with an air of danger and unpredictability. In this city where I lived, parties were commonplace, but no one could have foreseen that one of them would change my life forever. It was a regular Saturday night party at the local guy's house. The music was blaring, people were dancing, and alcohol was flowing down the cups by the river. I was hanging out with my friends, enjoying the carefree and fun atmosphere. But at some point I felt like I was being watched. Looking out through the crowd, I noticed a black car parked in the distance. It seemed to me that it had been following me since the beginning of the evening. Sensing something amiss, I decided to leave the party and head home. However, when I stepped outside, a black car was following me. Panic gripped me and I decided to run away. Through yards and alleys, I ran several blocks, but the car was still following me. My heart pounded in unison with my footsteps, and I felt that something terrible would catch up with me at any moment. Finally, I noticed that I was lost. All the yards and houses around me began to look the same, and I realized that I had lost my bearings. Desperate to find a way out, I turned onto a narrow street and collided with a black car pulling out in front of me. Clenching my fists, I prepared myself for the worst. My head was full of fear and senseless thoughts. But then, as the black car approached me, something incredible happened. The fog suddenly began to thicken, as if pervading everything around me. I could hardly see my own hands in front of my eyes. And then, in the blink of an eye, the car disappeared, as if it had dissolved into the fog. I stood still, stunned by what had happened. How could it be? Where had the car disappeared to? I tried to see something in the fog, but all my efforts were in vain. Returning home after the strange events with the black car, I tried to make sense of what had happened. My thoughts were swirling in my head, and my heart was still pounding like it wanted to beat out of my chest. As I tried to make sense of what had happened, I looked around carefully, but I didn't see anything suspicious. When I got home, I found that some of the things on my desk were upside down, and the chair in the living room was slightly displaced. This gave me an uneasy feeling, as if someone had been in my house in my absence. However, nothing beyond that indicated the presence of intruders. The past events remained a mystery to me. What was that car? And where had it disappeared to in the fog? The questions swirled in my head, but I couldn't find any answers. During the night, when everyone was asleep, I woke up to a strange sound coming from the living room. My heart sank with tension as I slowly got out of bed and cautiously made my way in the direction of the sound. The living room was dark, with only the faint light of the street lamps filtering through the curtains. I moved closer to get a better look at what was going on, and that's when I noticed something strange. A shadow was on the wall, but there was no light source in the room. It moved slowly, like a living thing, and I felt goosebumps run down my back. Where did she come from, and what was she doing in my house? My heart began to pound faster as I realized I couldn't just stay standing still. Slowly, with trembling hands, I approached the source of the shadow, but when I finally got to where it was coming from, I found nothing. Nothing but an old photo album that lay on a shelf. It could have just been a ghost from the past, but why had it appeared today? Questions plagued me, and I decided to examine that album more closely. Looking through the pages of the photo album, I came across a strange photograph. It showed a man in a black coat standing next to the very black car that had been following me that evening. The man's look seemed familiar, but I couldn't remember where I had seen him before. As soon as I looked closely at the picture, the lights in the room flickered and then went out. It was too dark around me, and I felt fear overwhelm me. However, the next moment I heard a whisper behind me. Turning around, I saw a figure in a black coat standing in the corner of the room. It was the same person as in the photograph. He looked at me with dark eyes emitting a cold light.
You know too much.
His voice sounded like a whisper in my ears. I shuddered in horror, not knowing what to do. Who is this man, and what does he want with me? Before I could break from my seat and run, the figure vanished, as if vanishing into thin air. My heart raced as I stood alone in the dark room, surrounded by dark secrets and unsolved riddles. As if in answer to my thoughts, a familiar silhouetted black car emerged from the fog in front of me. As if guiding me on a journey through the world of mystery and mysticism, it disappeared with the unknown, and I was left alone, only with my fears and questions. But now I was no longer afraid. My encounter with what was beyond my understanding only fueled my desire to know the truth. I decided to explore the mysteries that had so mystically entered my life. It began with a trip to the library, where I began to research the history of the city. Old records and legends revealed to me cryptic tales of mysterious occurrences involving black cars and dark figures. However, the deeper I dug, the more questions I had. What was this creature? How is it connected to my past? And how do I uncover all the secrets it carries with it? As I was wrapping up my research at the library, I stumbled upon an article that made my blood run cold. It spoke of a mystical black car, the subject of legends in the city, and of many people who had attempted to unravel its mysteries, only to vanish without a trace. Feeling the shivers run down my spine, I realized I couldn't stay there any longer. Quickly gathering my belongings, I left the library and headed home. My hands trembled with excitement as I packed everything I needed into a suitcase and set off for another city. far away from this mystical tale. I felt like my safety had been compromised, and all I wanted was to escape from it all and start afresh. With every mile I drove, my breathing grew calmer. I knew I could never forget what had happened, but I was ready to leave this nightmare behind and start a new chapter in my life. I hoped that in the new city, I could forget about the mystical enigmas and find peace.